so distract you. They go in front of you, they go between you, they will distract you. If you can come this way, let's fill this place up and let's just have the quorum here. It will be nice. If you can all just please come this way, that will be nice. Please just move this way. That will be really nice. Those on my far right, those here, if you can just move this way, that will be nice. Move here, they're here or there. That will be nice. That will be really nice. Thank you very much. Please, just help us, please. Let's have a bit of a quorum. I know I'm asking too much. I really do. I know, but please forgive me. Can you just occupy these ones here so that we don't have too much distractions when the others come in? Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for understanding. Thank you. It's just to sit this way and we're good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, my ladies in red, do not, when they come in, just move them this way. Once you fill up this place, then we can start sitting people that way. Thank you very much. Thank you. So this session, we're looking at emerging leaders and their role in the future of energy in Nigeria and indeed across Africa. That is what we're shining our spotlight on this time. There is always a need for a change of guard to bring in a fresh and young crew as the veterans are beginning to hang their career boots at one point or another. We need fresh and exciting leaders to come in and take the mantle of leadership in our industry and drive us through these murky waters of energy transition and bring us at the other end, as APO Secretary General said and as NJ said earlier, bring us to a future where we do not have to keep sending our people across the ocean to other parts of the world. We'll kickstart now. I'd like for you to please welcome with me Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Please welcome Ambassador Gabriel Tamino Aduda. Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause, please.
I thought they will be seated before we do that, so we can just run with them. They are not around?
They're here.
Okay. All right. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, and our panelists, I was hoping that I'll have them seated so we can address them, seeing who is going to be a panel member before we go forward. But I think this afternoon's session is especially important and at the same time very interesting because we want to look at going forward. So far, and in the various editions we've had, we've looked at what has been happening in the industry, where the world is at this point, and then how to fit into transition and what have you. But I think that the time has come for us to begin to look forward. What happens with the energy sector going forward? How do we ensure energy sufficiency going forward? Today, there isn't a single person in this room that is not dependent on energy. Your phones require energy. Your iPads and laptops require energy. For you to even get work done in your offices, you require energy. Every bit. So it's as if our entire life hangs around energy. Your vehicles, when you travel, now we're moving from use of PMS and vehicles to use of gas, and now we're going electric, some already on batteries. And then interestingly, last week I was reading a document where one of the countries, or was it China also, is beginning to already think about phasing out the use of batteries and still have electricity without the use of batteries. So you see that a lot is happening at the same time in the industry. Some of these are quite innovative and very new initiatives that are just beginning to come on the scene, but that will mature with time. And whether we like it or not, there is going to be, this whole transition period is going to be met with a lot of surprises, new things coming up. The other day I read about someone moving cars just using water 100%. How were they able to arrive at that? It might sound utopia, it might sound new at this point, it might sound futuristic, But the fact that it's been tried and it's been tried somewhere means that very soon we're going to see a breakthrough in that area and perhaps commercial quantities begin to come forth. So the energy sector is one that is not only very important, but also one that changes every single day. It's either we're looking at cleaner ways of getting things done, or we're looking at cheaper ways of getting things done, or we're looking at how to preserve even our environment while we still enjoy some of these sources of energy. Just yesterday, I had the privilege of chatting with the German ambassador, and I was happy to hear that just yesterday, the last 2 nuclear sites in Germany were shut down finally. That is a journey that has taken some time. So nuclear energy is now zero completely in the whole of Germany. And yet, just a few years ago, they had over 50 sites. So a lot is happening in the industry. And this afternoon, we'll have a group of panelists that will sit and talk to us about what is happening in the industry and begin to give us a futuristic idea of what to look up to. What is tomorrow going to look like? The MC did a good job at telling us, well, we've heard from the old brigades, and perhaps it's time we begin to hear from the future brigade, this Gen Z generation. And you'll agree with me that this time around things are different. Recently, I saw an article where, I think a video, where someone took the old phone, the one we used to dial. How many of you know green, you know? And then the person gave it to his 15-year-old son and asked the child what that was, and the child didn't have a clue what that was all about. Why? Because that child was born in the, cellular age. You know, the mobile phone ages. And so they didn't have the privilege of either ringing that or going to queue up at NITEL to wait to use a card to make a phone call. So you see, things are changing. And going forward, we definitely are entering into new eras, whether we like it or not. News flash. It's either you join the bandwagon or you will be left behind. You don't have a choice in the matter. So this afternoon, I think we have a group of very vibrant, well-selected young people that will talk to us about where we are and what we are looking up to going forward and working to ensure energy sufficiency in all its ramifications. So I welcome us all to take our time, listen carefully, and I hope that the interactive session will be very, very engaging so that we can indeed take them up. Ask questions where we need to ask, make comments where we need to make contributions where necessary, such that by the time we leave this hall today, we will have been better enriched. I welcome you all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Gabriel Tanimo Aduda, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Okay, straight into the business of the panel. I would bring them up. I will bring them up after we have taken the presentations so that they will benefit, as will everybody, from the slide presentations by as our fireside chat presenters. Okay, so first we'd listen to, from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the PPP Upstream Leadership Forum Lead for the ministry. He will address us. That'll be followed by a presentation from out of our speaker from SPDC, and thereafter I will bring the panel up to do justice to the conversations. Let's begin by welcoming Engineer Oladipo Agbola from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources.
Thank you. So this one is for you here. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Standing on already established protocol. My name is Oladipo Agbola from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. I'll be speaking on humanizing energy, and My presentation slide, I have very few minutes, and I will try to rush through. Basically, it's about humanizing energy, and my slides is what is humanizing energy, why humanize energy, what are the key drivers, challenges, solutions to it, then the conclusion. Now, going straight to the presentation. Humanized energy is a new discourse on the Global Energy Forum, and it will be incomplete without a brief of how energy affects us. It's central to everything that we do, our social development as a nation, and it's cut across virtually all the 17 sustainable development goals. Without energy, you cannot achieve any of the 17 sustainable development. So definitely, it is intricately linked with our existence as a nation or as a continent. So basically, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is showed here, where it talked about increased production, better health, decent jobs, decent health, and a decreased greenhouse gases, etc., as listed there. Why must we humanize? I mean, what is humanized energy? It's an approach to providing energy access that puts people at the heart of the process. It recognizes that energy is not just a technical issue, but a social one with cultural, economic, and environmental dimensions. It is a joined-up agenda where global imperatives of more energy and climate neutrality is put in place in a context of affordability and social justice. It explores new trends and trends within the energy sector, transforming the intangible technical innovation into compelling human-centric solutions that is putting humans critical in whatever decision that we are taking on energy transition as a country or as a continent. So it ensures that we don't leave anybody behind, that everybody is duly carried along, that it is just. We ensure that there is a climate justice for each and every one of us. Why must we humanize? There is energy poverty in Nigeria, lack of energy access, and that is visible. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people with just 5,000 megawatts of electricity, while countries like the United States has a population of about 331 people with an installed capacity of over 1,200 gigawatts. UK example also, in the same vein, has something of such, about 80 million people having the installed capacity of over 100 gigawatts. So ours is an energy deficient country. Sub-Saharan Africa has over 500 million people that are not on energy. So definitely, where there is energy, there will definitely be poverty, because there will be no industrialization to having to drive that. Well, the climate change momentum also. Okay. The climate change momentum, it's driving seriously, because we are all affected by the effects here in Africa and in Nigeria. At least 34 out of the 36 states of the Federation have been affected by floods that has happened in the last 5 years. Also, in the Sahel region, we have experienced a lot of issues that have happened relating to climate change. So definitely, there is a need for us to humanize. Unfortunately, we generate just about 3 to 4% of the emissions that have been generated, and that the global emissions, as compared to the wealthy nations, the rich nations, that have generated far up to 44%, despite having a lower population of about 15%. So there is the need for us to do that. Then the geopolitical crisis of the geopolitical crisis that came from the war of Russia and Ukraine. These are issues that caused a little issues, because there was now energy issues are happening within the global world. Most of our wealthy nations actually returned back to the use of coal. These are plants that they initially told us that have been decommissioned, and thereby going back to coal. The going back of the European Union to the use of this decommissioned coal plant will raise their global greenhouse emissions by at least 4% because of their high denominational value. So there is a need for us as Africans. We generate less than 5% to also humanize. While the non-classification of the funding of fossil fuels, now in the drive for the wealthy nations, they include gas as part of their transition policies, etc. And they are saying that they would not fund fossil fuel. There should be a disintegration between gas projects, that there's usually a disintegration that ensures that gas projects are effectively funded, so that we can use that to also develop as a nation, just like they are also using it in their own country as it involves them. Now, there is social unevenness. Social unevenness will definitely happen because there is a disparity that has happened by virtue of energy the energy insufficiency. So what are the key drivers? The high population density. We have high population and it will continue to be in place. Now, it is estimated that by 2050, Nigeria will be one of the most populous country, and Lagos, for example, will have a population above 30 million. Definitely, we need the energy to provide the jobs. We need the energy to provide jobs for them. We need energy we need infrastructure. We need everything. Now there is a shift from the middle class. A shift on the middle class by virtue of developments that are taking place. Urbanization will definitely come in place because developments are in place likewise. So stronger economic potential. Every country is working towards having to increase their economic potential. So definitely these are reasons why we must consider is infrastructure development I have mentioned and the leapfrogging of technology. Now, what are the challenges? Nigeria's low energy trilemma. Now, Nigeria has a low energy trilemma. As at 2022, the report that was released by the World Energy Council shows that Nigeria energy trilemma is just 39%. Now, when you look at energy security is how available people can access it. We say have a fairly one, but the equity, which talks about availability, accessibility, is extremely low. So we need to do more in that direction. That's now coming out, the environmental sustainability, that is, what are the energy needs that we use today that must meet today's needs and also meet tomorrow's needs for the future generation to come. So whatever we need to take as decision, we must consider the humans, but it must meet the needs of today and also meet the needs of tomorrow. For us, we have a low trilemma index and we must work towards that because the three are essentially important in having to drive that. Now, how do we humanize? We must localize our carbon future pathways towards our comparative advantage. A typical example is Nigeria, where we launched the energy transition plan, and which has been driven towards the use of gas. Gas will be our transition fuel, and that is why in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the Ministry of Petroleum said we are in a decade of gas that we have launched, that we have now said 2021 to 2030 is our decade of gas development as a nation, where we will use our gas, which is over 200 TCF, to actually develop as a nation. Though we have to bring existing production. This will be done within the upstream and midstream and downstream. Under the upstream is the use of carbon management techniques, carbon capture, utilization and storage, direct air capture. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission is already working on the carbon capture, utilization and storage. Certain fields have been identified as prototype that will be used in that direction. Also is the gas flare commercialization. But the gas flare commercialization is an initiative started from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources in 2016, which was handed to the default Department of Petroleum Resources, now Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. Now it was relaunched last year, which has identified 48 sites already that would be based on their timetable that will be ending by April, that 48 sites have been allocated, that have been identified, that will be given out to the bidders that would, within 18 to 24 months, we expect that most of these flare sites will be taken on board. And if you could check the recent World Bank report on gas flare as it relates to Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the countries that have improved immensely in having to reduce their gas flare intensity. So that is it. Now, on the midstream and downstream side, is to look at our refineries operating at Euro 5 standard, that is at 50 ppm for sulfur. And this is being looked at. We are already working on NPC in that direction also. For the existing modulars, they have been communicated across to see how they can work on that. So the other one is the climate swap, which is the climate swap is the use of it's for the energy poor countries that are deficit, that have a lot of loans, is for the rich countries to actually swap with us by virtue of our low emissions and opening an escrow account in that direction. Now, the access of funds is very, very key. For us to, looking at the energy transition plan, for Nigeria to transit into a low carbon future, Nigeria needs about $410 billion to actually transit. At it is an average of about 10 billion against business as usual. If we really need to transit, the funds must be available. The funds are not available. So this is just an opportunity also to call on the G7 countries on the need to include Nigeria in the global funding partnership from their funds that Nigeria benefits from it, so that Africa's populous country can be able to meet the net zero target by 2060. So, conclusion, for Nigeria and Africa, we need to humanize our energy for our potential greatness. This clear implication of this reality is that our commitment to carbon neutrality will include clear plans of energy access if we are to confront poverty. For Nigeria, the order of energy needs shall be based on our unique characteristics to ensure a just transition, which are affordability, reliability, cleanness, as against the wealthy nations' order of priority of cleanliness, reliability, and affordability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Engineer Ladapo Abola is the PPP Upstream Leadership Forum lead for the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Still, in the same breath, we will take the second presentation as I welcome now the Business Opportunity Manager for Shell Petroleum Development Company. Please welcome Agunloye Ehimen. Any issue? And a Catholic priest of Igbo descent once said, in this technology age in which we are in, so yeah, in this technology age we're in, sometimes we take these kind of pauses or breaks to make sure technology works smoothly. Ehimen, it's over to you.
I can see it though, but I don't know.
No, I think they'll turn it off.
Oh, okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. Standing on all existing protocols. My name is Ehimen Agunloye. I work with SPDC as what they call a business opportunity manager. We've been told it's a fireside chat, which means I have 7 minutes. And I think the timer starts. So I'll just run through 7 slides, and I'll make it pretty quick. But before I start, maybe by show of hands, how many people know how much you pay for electricity per kilowatt hour in your household? If you know precisely how much you pay. See, I expect, can I have my slide, please? This is the kind of response I expected, because when I started to do my research, I realized I didn't know how much I paid. So if you can see the bottom part, I had to go to a receipt I paid in April to recognize how much I paid. And most importantly, I found I pay more than they pay in Singapore for where I live. So basically, I pay about 75 Naira per kilowatt hour. And as you can see that some countries like Saudi Arabia pay as little as 20 Naira per kilowatt hour. And Singapore, which is very well developed, pays 65. So I think I need to speak to my estate agent. I've been overpaying for electricity. But more importantly, the average Nigerian pays about 23. So quite good. I think my core message from this slide is we talk about energy transition, and I've been asked to speak for 7 minutes about humanizing energy. And when you start to think about humanizing energy, you realize that most people actually don't know where they use energy, how they use energy, how much it costs, or what the transition cost is all about, right? And their role in it. And if you start to change the conversation from climate change emissions into humanizing energy, humans and people need to understand what it means to humanize energy, right? One key thing I also found out was 81% of the global mix, so roughly 80%, is still being supplied by fossil fuels. So 30 years going on, we're still being supplied by fossil fuels. And I think if I had asked you how much it takes to power 1,500 homes, from turbines, nobody can answer it, right? I found out it was only 3 turbines, right? So I think the key message here, as I mentioned, is really, do we really understand what it takes to supply energy and truly transit through the global transition? Now, I thought it was very interesting when I looked at this plot. The plot actually extended for 200 years, but I thought to stream down the plot. And it was quite interesting that at the turn of the 20th century, more than half of our energy still comes from coal. So when we talk about transition, we've been transiting for a very long time, 200 years. So, and still, quite a significant amount of that still comes from coal. And I can bet you that it still comes from biomass. It wasn't until 1960, well, before I was born, but still, until 1960 that we started to talk about nuclear, and nuclear came into the mix. So it's quite new, right? And then when we start talking about what we call modern renewables, it's only until 1980s that they started to talk about it. And then where we stand, as I said, we've been talking about energy transition, but I can bet you it's been going very slow. So while people say, in the earlier session this morning, he talked about, I don't want to transit. We've been transiting all our lives, for all we can say. The question now is what fuel and what energy mix do we want our future to have, over and beyond just oil and gas, nuclear? What else do we want to bring into the energy basket to make how we define the future for not only Nigeria, but for, I think, the greater part of the world? Now, this was a very interesting slide for me because I never knew that Nigeria had only 2.15 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. That's very, very small. If you compare it to what you have in China or in Europe, right, it's very small. China is almost talking about 150. So I said 2.1, I didn't say 215. So you can imagine, and that number has been about 2.1 for the last 10 years. So we haven't really moved the game when we start talking about renewable energy. So when you bring the question about humanizing, and I would spend some time to define to you what it means to humanize energy, you would realize that renewable cannot play the role that we're asking renewable to play for us in Nigeria. So it's very important. So let's go back a little bit and define what it means when you say humanizing energy. I always like to throw out the Paris Agreement because I think everybody kind of relates with the Paris Agreement, right? Everyone has agreed that we need to sort of get to a net zero by 2050, 2060. And I think that's a good thing. And I think we need to all agree that at some point, we need to stop damaging the environment. It's quite important. But what I like about the COP27, when the UN chief said, he said, we can and we must win, but he said it's his battle for our lives. And I think the important point is the lives in it. Like, until we change the conversation to be about humans and less about emissions, I'm saying it's not important, it will never really get to a zero-sum game. A lot of leaders, have spent so much time, a lot of conflicted arguments, we get to a very extreme polarization where you have people saying climate change activists would say we have to destroy pipelines. And I don't think that's the kind of conversation we need to have, because it's a very unhelpful outcome for modern energy society. What we need to start thinking about is how we all come together. Someone said it in the morning, like climate change and sustainable development at the same part of the coin. You have to see it as both sides of the coin. And there was a saying that said, it's not simply an industry, political or environmental or even an economic issue. It's actually a human issue. And until we start to think about energy transition from a human perspective, the story is going to be the same. 200 years we've been trying to transit, right? So there's a definition, and I copied it as a dictionary definition, so please, I'm an engineer, so I'm not very good with words. But basically, they said humanizing energy is really about exploring key trends and challenges within the energy sector, transforming intangible technology innovation into compelling human-centric stories. So until we tell the stories about the woman in the village who truly can live a good life. Remember United Development Goal 7. It's about what? Power, clean energy for everyone. Until that woman's story comes into the mix, I don't want to talk about the number of kilotons of emissions I'm having. Every person must have a role to play and survive in the transition. Now, I work for Shell, so I must talk about Shell. So for Shell, and I think Shell's story is fantastic, right? Because the first two things I want to show you is, we talk about net zero, and I said net zero remains very important. But the other thing we always talk about is powering lives, right? So it has to work, net zero, powering life. But even if you look underneath our net zero, right, there are things we talk about in terms of we need to continue to produce and sell hydrocarbons. And you need to think about how can we do that in a way that it remains clean, right? Reduce flaring and all the good stuff. The second thing we also talk about is that we need to pursue efficiency in our assets. I'm looking in front of me and I see my GM, Safety and Environment, and I'm very happy because she leading the change and the story around how we can continue to produce oil and gas in a clean and sustainable way. But more importantly, is the shifting to natural gas. I always say it, I say oil is this very stubborn cousin, stubborn cousin of gas, right? And they kind of need to divorce themselves. You know how you have that little sister that you're like, oh yeah, I need to run away. Well, that's how gas kind of has to run away from oil and has its own independent story as a transition fuel. So there's a lot of nice story here about what Shell does, but I have my colleague who's going to come up, Caroline, and I'm sure she's going to tell us a lot more around what we do in this space. So let's bring it home in terms of humanizing energy for Nigeria. So if you remember, I talked about Nigeria, we have 2.15 gigawatts of renewable capacity. But very interesting, 80% of our energy capacity comes from generators. Honestly, I didn't know. I see a lot of generators and I know, but I didn't realize it was 80%. Only 6 gigawatts of operational grid capacity we have. 2 200 million people, 6. That's very, very small. 90 million people in Nigeria have no connection to the grid. Like literally, you know how we say, oh, NEPA has brought light. They don't understand what that means. They are not connected to the grid at all. So if you're dealing with a country with this sort of background, when you start talking about humanizing energy or energy transition, the story is very different. Now, interestingly, I read Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, and I kind of liked it. I thought it was really, really good. It was a very good plan. And the reason I liked it was a few things. It talked about lifting 100 million people out of poverty. That's the kind of plan you want, right? When you talk about energy transition, the people and the lives has to be very important. You know, the second thing they talked about is that promoting a fair, inclusive, and equitable. And that's very important, especially when we talk to our colleagues from the developed world. You know, a lot of us, you know, we school abroad, we work abroad, but it's very important. It has to be inclusive and it has to be equitable. You cannot chase climate change agenda that's a disadvantage of more than half of the world. It has to come together. It's both sides of the coin. And then finally, I like that Nigeria keeps saying gas remains a transition fuel. And I think that's very important. So if you have time, please do spend some time and read the energy transition fuel. But there's one important thing that I read that I saw that I like. They said, billions of people have no connection to electricity. They lack access to quality energy for clean cooking, basic better health, and new livelihood. Yet some advocates wrangle about the color of new fuel types. Is it green or blue hydrogen? Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying you have to bring it together. Until you bring the human element in the story you tell, you know, how can I make sure I transit, get clean energy, but at the same time we have enough energy to elevate a great percentage of the world out of poverty? We're not getting anywhere. My final slide, you know, is about role of emerging leaders. For some reason, they feel we are the young generation, so I'm glad to be here as we identified as one of the emerging leaders. But anyway, I went online and I saw 100 most influential people on climate change, and I kind of liked it. I saw Greta, though. I didn't want to put her up there. But a lot of the folks you see there are talking about we have to destroy pipeline, we have to stop. And you can see what happened with Ukraine, right? Once we went through a period where we had a reduction in the supply of gas, people suffer. So for you to get to that point, you have to ask yourself, what else is coming to replace it? And get that story. So I'm not saying oil should go down, gas comes in, and other things comes in. You cannot say I want to transit when you have 2.15 gigawatts of renewable capacity. You don't have enough capacity to move to renewable yet. So you have to respect the role gas has to play as a transition fuel. And let me just conclude with a few things. You know, I think we've talked about collaboration. There's no single person that can solve the problem. I think we need to collaborate across different organizations. Leadership has to come from everywhere. You know, there's a lot of resource that's required, and we from Africa have to really make a speech or a reason why developed countries should keep investing in us, right? If your story is different, because you have to tell a different story. Your background, your context is different. So you have to make a case where they feel it's still important. And then, of course, technology remains an enabler. You know, we have to continue to research. I'm so glad that Professor Ledare is going to moderate this session as a professor, so he can tell us more about the research. And let me conclude to say the conversation has to continue to happen. You know, there are a large part of the society that are totally unprepared for the real choices and the depth of change that is involved. You know, we're never going to achieve success unless we involve everybody, and unless we equip them, and unless we help them articulate their role and their story in the energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Himen Agunloye, Business Opportunity Manager for SPDC. Yourself and your colleague in the fireside chat presentation, Agbola, have set the tone, set the stage for this panel to start. So let me begin quickly. You're already seated. She's on the panel. Joining her on the panel is the Chairman, Petroleum Contractors Trade Section, and the Country Manager for Technip FMC, Mr. Tayo Akinkumi. You're welcome. Also on the panel is the Chief Executive of Petroleum Training Institute. You've listened to Himen talk about training and research, and he comes in with a lot of experience and expertise in that regard. Dr. Henry Ojimo. We're talking about humanizing energy and what the future leaders will do about it. This next panelist is one of such present and future leader of the industry, Managing Director of Keon West Africa International, Dr. Victor Ekpeyong. You're welcome. Yesterday we were told by Mr. Naikam of Shell how excited Shell is to be having this, what he called impact investment in terms of power generation using renewable sources. And All On is that arm of Shell doing that. Chief Executive Officer All On, Caroline Ebumbu. You're welcome. Well, if you're looking to groom future leaders, you need an industry seasoned expert, an elder, to show them the direction to go, where the bodies are buried, and what mistakes not to make. He is one of such leader. Research professor and chair at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, Professor Wumi Iledari, our moderator. Dipo Agbola will also be making interventions whenever the moderator needs him to, but he'll be doing that from where he's seated. I'll just hand him a microphone. So, Prof, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, and let me again express my deep appreciation for the invitation to be here. And I also welcome all my distinguished panel. I'm particularly excited because I can see a lot of young emerging professionals, even supported by those that have already arrived. Yes, anything we do in this planet Earth is about human beings. In fact, if we go to creation, for those who believe in it, everything that is of importance for human being to survive, God put it on this planet Earth, and we are endowed. Yes, energy transition is not static, it is dynamic. And quite often it could take about 60 years to move from one energy source to the other. And that energy source in itself will not disappear. And I think we saw it in the fire presentation and even the presentation by the permanent secretary. Well, ours is to find a way, looking into the future, that whatever we do, especially when it comes to developing energy resources, exploring and exploiting them, is about maximizing the social welfare of human beings. Even the climate change discussion is about how to maximize the social welfare of you and I. And that means there must be a way for us to balance the energy transition dynamics. And there are 4 components to it that we're going to talk about, and also advance some of the strategic thinking that Africa must adopt in order to maximize our social welfare. There are 4 elements that are quite important when you are trying to translate energy resources to human optimization in their lifestyle. And that is what humanizing energy really is. First is what we call accessibility. There must be energy access in whatever form that it is for human use, for social, economic, and national development. Second is what we call availability. You may have abundant energy resources, be it renewable or fossil fuel, but it may not be available for human consumption. How do we make that to happen without necessarily destroying the purpose of living? Finally, or the third element, when we're trying to go along the humanization of energy, is what we call acceptability. It is one thing to promote an energy source, it's another thing for it to be acceptable to a particular society. And all of these elements must be balanced if you are supposed to accomplish the purpose. And finally, it's all about economics, affordability. Yes, It may be available, it may be accessible, it may also be acceptable, but if it is not affordable, it's of no consequence. So I want to welcome my panel. And what we are going to do is to allow them to have 5 minutes and give a perspective the way I've given my own perspective. And so we have 3 of them that have not spoken, am I right? Or 4? 4 of them. I'll give them about 4 to 5 minutes to just make a perspective on the humanization mechanism that will not necessarily compromise sustainable environment, guarantee energy security for the future, and at the same time, what can we do to make energy affordable? And I'll start from my extreme right, Tayo.
Yes, sir.
You have 5 minutes to let us know what it is that you have in mind that can really support this journey of making sure our thinking going forward is energy humanization. It's about human, period.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Remember the time framework.
Oh, yeah, that time. Thank you. First, I had to get the professor to promise me this is not going to be graded, because the last time I got questions from professors, I think I got a D or something. So I don't want to be under that pressure. Thank you very much, sir. That's just a little bit of a recap of what's been said, and I completely agree with it. But for me, it's the world, in spite of all the concerns, some of them being valid, some of them being overblown, everyone agreed that we don't want to go back to the dark ages, right? So we need energy. But then, energy is needed for the human race to do what we need to do, to survive, to progress, and all. But at the same time, there's the other extreme of it that says we should not, overlook the concern about, what the impact of what we are doing, be it energy usage or energy derivation or anything else we do in our endeavors, how those will impact the sustainability of our system as we know it. So these are fair discussions to have. I choose to focus on one item, and the reason for that will be pretty obvious now. Ambassador Aduda, I was introducing myself to him just now, and I said I'm the chairperson of PCTS. And he said, what is PCTS? And I'm like, okay. Again, so I'll do it again. PCTS. So you know OPTS. They're the producers. They're the rich boys. PCTS is the broke brothers of those. So we are the contractors, the service contractors that helps our customers, the OPTS folks, to do their work. And the reason for why I'm saying that is we believe and focus on technology, and that's what comes to mind when we see a problem. It's what has driven our industry to where it is today, and we believe it's what we need to deploy. So how then can technology help with the trilemma of energy, which is, as the prof said, I put it into 3 areas: accessibility, availability, which is part of accessibility, affordability, and sustainability. If I start from the accessibility side of it, the need for energy security is important, and everybody's established that. But what we know is that technology has a long way to go, but we still have opportunities to improve the the availability of energy. So there's still some work we need to do. There's a lot of areas in the renewable side of the business, or of the spectrum rather, that needs to be done. We need to improve our storage capability. We need to improve the efficiency of our systems. We need to look at energy grid and smart energy grids and things like that will help us make energy, distributed grid, by the way, for renewables to make energy available. So there are technologies in that area that are there to be deployed, and there a lot of work to be done. Battery technology still needs a lot of work, but there's progress being made in there. But the purpose of that, again, is to make energy available. Then the next one is affordability. And that pretty much goes to the point of making that energy affordable for the population that needs it. There was a number that was quoted. Africa has about maybe 17% of the world population, and we're consuming less than 3% of the energy compared to the rest of the world. Why is that? I would say part of it is because people just cannot afford it. Again, going back to technology, we need to find ways to improve project economics. I know most of the people sitting here are either involved in a tender or rolling out RFQs and stuff. If we deploy technology properly, we will be able to justify the economics of getting those projects to come on board. And when those projects go online, we will then be able to provide energy at affordable rates. There are you can look around at quite a number of technologies that we know today. AI is one. Additive manufacturing is part of it. Robotics, all the things that are coming up lately, and they're moving really fast. But the purpose of those is to help us make energy accessible and in a cheap way. And the last part of it, just to quickly round this up if I could, is the sustainability part of it. I've said it, we cannot be irresponsible, and none of us is trying to be. And for that purpose, we need to start thinking of, okay, we need fossil fuel, for sure, we know it. Gas is gonna be part of that mix, if nothing else. How then can we help our customers, how then can we help the producers to do this? Part of it is looking at technology that allows us to use renewables to drive the fields. And you can look through, if we're paying attention to what's going on in technology today, there are now drilling rigs and subsea equipment that are all electrified, meaning you can potentially use energy from the wind farm that is pretty close, or even a tidal wave to drive that. In doing that, you're able to limit and help our customers limit the scope 1 and scope 2 of that emission spectrum. And also making sure that we improve the efficiency of the system. If you can get a well on stream quicker, then you're spending less time burning diesels on vessels, on rigs, and all the associated items. All of those come together to improve our carbon footprint. Now, I just kind of want to gloss over that, and I will pass it back to you, sir, so I don't
Thank
get
you very much.
this time.
Thank you very much. Yes, perhaps we need to be thinking about technology advancement. And let me slot into, maybe we need to be thinking about our tertiary educational system. CEO.
Thank you very much, sir.
You are welcome.
Yeah.
Please give us your perspective.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Adimula. I'm from the Petroleum Training Institute. Our mandate is primarily to develop the capacity, the human capacity technology for the oil and gas industry. And also, as we transit now to energy industry, we're also transiting and producing the capacity for the energy industry. Somebody defined earlier today that humanizing energy is all about exploring trends. And one of the trends that we find today in the world is about sustainability. That is how to produce energy in a sustainable way. And this is coming about from the fact that the energy that we use primarily today, that's the fossil fuel, has a lot of issues and produces greenhouse gases, which has a lot of negative impact on the environment. Thus, we need to have new forms of energy, and that largely today, the world is looking towards renewables and other forms of energy that are neutral, carbon neutral, and will not negatively impact the environment. And just as been noted, yes, all these new forms of energy, as good as they sound and given the potentials are possible, there are still a lot of shortcomings. For instance, if you look at a renewable energy like the sun doesn't shine 24 hours of the day, and then you need to find a way to store energy when the sun is shining. Now, that requires a lot of research to develop new storage facilities like smart batteries with high capacity and all that. Now, all this call for, even as we talk of energy transition, maybe we should also talk about knowledge transition. We need a period of time where we need to retool, we need to rescale, and to develop new capacities to take advantage of all the possibilities that are there for us. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, we don't pay too much premium to research and development, nor do we fund education optimally. And that is why there's still that gap, and the gap is widening compared to other parts of the world. When in our first earlier presentation, we saw that China was doing so much in renewables and very little done in Nigeria, it's also because of the capacity to do what is possible. So one of the things that we think at Petroleum Training Institute is that even though as we humanize energy, we must also find ways to develop capacity, to develop the humans that will work in the energy industry, not just for now, but also in the future. What we do in the Institute is to bring up these future leaders of the industry that will make their impact in the industry by instilling the kind of knowledge we find that will help the industry to grow even in the future. So as we talk about humanizing energy, so far so good, but yes, there's one part we are leaving behind, and that is to carry the humans along in terms of developing them to have the capacity. If you talk about humanizing energy, you need to do a lot of advocacy, a lot of training. Now, all this, if we don't put them on board to begin to train, to begin to do the necessary advocacy, then we are leaving a large part of people behind. One of the things we can do to humanize energy is to find ways to make people use energy more efficiently. Unless they are trained, unless they are made aware, unless they are tutored to know what are the possible things that could be done, then we'll still continue to have some of these problems. So we're advocating, yes, energy transition is going on, sustainability and all that, but let's not forget the training and the R&D of the energy sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the important energy sources, one of them that is not paid attention to is energy efficiency. And therefore, public education is equally critical, which I think must be part of the strategic framework that the African government must think about. How do you bring on board the pathway to optimize humanizing energy? And I'm going to try to be apolitical. Humanizing energy must avoid waste. And I know Victor talks about technology, processes, and to a large extent, getting people to buy into your thinking. What did I say? And I'll be surprised if I can keep my promise. The debate about fuel subsidy or no fuel subsidy is part of the equation if you want to be efficient. And Victor, don't go into that area. Stay with your technology processes and in this humanization. Leave that one to me in my summary. Yes. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful location and discussing about energy. I would say we taught when we primary school that democracy is government of the people, think for the people or by the people. And I would say energy is of the people and for the people. whatever we need to know that energy is for human and human is for energy. And we don't need to take that out. And whatever technology or whatever we need to develop, we need to know that the technology is for the people. I know majority of us here are, Nigerians. We are not foreigners. I see few foreigners here. We have known that the policies makers and the policies for energy in Nigeria sometimes are anti-people. How many of us here maybe have tried to do electrification, maybe trying to draw energy into your facility? Maybe you build a new facility and try to see how to get energy into it. You discover that the setup of the energy policies are sometimes anti-people. I want to use myself as a case study. We bought a property in Port Harcourt and we built an assembling plant. And we're trying to bring in energy into the plant. And we talked to the PhD in Port Harcourt, and they gave us a bill. And we paid the bill. And when the time for commissioning came, and they told us that what we paid for is not what we desire. For us to get what we need to, because we were looking at getting the one they call line 33, the one that has at least 18 power. And they gave us line 11. And we said we need line 33 so that we can work effectively. And they brought another bill, and we paid for it. And after that, immediately the line was commissioned. The next month, they brought a bill. So you discover that is the energy policy, is it for the people or is it against the people? And that is one of the way of running businesses in Nigeria, which energy is number one of them and is very frustrating. So as a people, we shouldn't be even talking about transition when we have not made energy affordable. Because as it stands now, energy in Nigeria is not affordable. And we talked about technology. What technology are we deploying into our energy infrastructure to make it accessible and affordable? I was somewhere, we're talking about Italian, there is one company in Italy called N.I.E.S. N.I.E.S happened before, was a state-owned energy company, and later on they now moved to maybe a private company. And someone came into that company called Francesco Terres. He came into that company and changed the company entirely. And when people were not talking about transition into renewable, this gentleman foresaw what is going to happen in the world and start building mini grid. Because this is what we in Nigeria need to look into. Today, there is a lot of energy generation, but there is no means of evacuation in terms of transmission. Basically, most of our transmission line are phased out, are obsolete. So he brought in a technology that each suburb, each region supposed to have something like a mini grid. And that was achievable. So for us to think about that we will successfully transmit or transition into renewable, we need to consider that the people that need to use these must afford it. And we need to make it accessible. Prof, I think I should stop here at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think the bottom line is the transformation of energy system to become usable involves a lot of technological development. Unfortunately, there are three components, and Carol, I'm coming to you, I'm setting you up. By the way, don't worry, no grade. You have A already, about A+. Because really, I'm a professor of E for she, so. No, jokes apart is economics, technology, and public policy. It's the interaction of the three. And each of them, like Imen said, there must be a collaboration. There must be a sync. And this one thing that has been established, Carol, by everybody else is humanizing energy begins with availability. When it is available, then it must be accessible. When it is accessible, it must then be acceptable. And when it is acceptable, it must be affordable. In that case, there must be a balancing act. And in economics, we call it Pareto optimality. It is impossible for somebody to be better off in a Pareto optimality efficiency, and someone will not be worse off. And that's what Africa is asking the Western world to understand, that in the economic development framework, we are not Pareto.
Yeah.
No. So in that case, we cannot talk in terms of being on the same plane, on the same speed with energy transition. That's where the concept of humanizing energy becomes critical, especially for the younger leaders. Because the future is really yours. I don't want to make any prophetic statement. You have been doing this for 50 years, right? Do you think I have another 50 years? Who knows? Carol, what is it that you want to give us to hold on to, even as we transist?
Thank you very much, Professor. The advantage of going last is that it makes my job very easy in terms of keeping to my assignment, 4 minutes or under. And like my co-panelist, I'm a good student. I believe in A's indeed. So even if Professor said I have a A, I want to keep it. So a lot has been said by my co-panelist already and by our honorable moderator, the Professor. But I do still want to go back to a few of those points because they're at the heart of what I do, what we do at Olon. Olon is an impact investment vehicle that has been seeded by Shell to help close the energy access gap in Nigeria. And by virtue of what we do, humans, people are at the center of our work. It is the very basic nature of our work. So talking about basic step, when it comes to humans, all of us people, I think it's been said, cost is the number one thing. We talk about electricity, we talk about access, but at what cost? That's a very important point that when we sit down in such forums and discuss and put our minds together with regards to these kind of questions, we need to keep in mind. It has to be affordable. And for this to happen, we need to have a careful mix when it comes to our energy mix or electrification planning. I think we've spoken already a lot this morning about integrated electrification planning and being aware that yes, energy transition is important, but it has to be done within a context of what a country has in terms of its energy sources. When you have this adequate mix and you are able to offer to the people a timed, a phased approach towards long-term energy transition, I think you're already in the right path. And like my colleague has mentioned earlier, when you do look at Nigeria's energy transition plan, you actually do smile with pride, because indeed it's been made very clear there what the end goal is, but also what are the medium-term steps to be taken to get to that goal, transitioning, utilizing gas and other important abundant resources in Nigeria. Another point when it comes to this important question that we are discussing is, yes, obviously the cost as mentioned, But aside of the cost, it's not just about ensuring that people have access to energy, but what type of energy. We really have to move forward past just the light bulb access, charging 1 or 2 phones. But in long term, again, going back to the question, humanizing energy. What matters to the people? What matters to the people is to be able to obviously have productive uses of energy, not just have the lighting that's going to, which is critical, but that's going to be to allow us to just do some work within the house. But how do we make that productive? How are we providing enough resources for people to really have the means to get out of energy poverty? That's very important. So when we look at cost, we also have to look at the different type of tiers of energies that we are providing to people. But then those are points that are alluding to supply of energy, but that's not it. That's not enough. Another point of the energy transition, actually, even before I get to that other point, I think it's been mentioned, it's about making sure people have the skills. We talk about transition, we talk about energy transition. Well, that often comes with obviously very important impact when it comes to workforce, employment, labor force. Transitioning to various and different new type of energies must come with the important training for capabilities, ensuring that people have the right skills. It's not even just in the energy sector. When you look at AI, I believe somebody also mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence, the type of jobs are changing. People are being replaced. So how do we ensure that even before we get into the field, we already have the right tools? That's something that's very important and definitely part of our mission, because aside of just investing, we're also preparing Nigerian companies when it comes to helping them develop the right capacities to actually compete, not only in Nigeria, but internationally. Then maybe one final point is about also ensuring that we are not just receivers, just receiving energy supply, but actors. What do I mean by that? One of the things that we're looking at very intentionally is the domestication of various elements of the supply chain. What we're talking about long-term sustainability. What about starting right now already ensuring that some of those elements that can be manufactured in Nigeria are already manufactured in Nigeria? A lot of the companies that we support in the off-grid sector, but obviously that's applicable to other sectors, still have to purchase however percent of their equipment overseas. With all of the devaluation and inflation issues that we currently know, you know that this does not go with longevity. So how do we fight that? Well, we right now are looking at ways to really strengthen localization of equipment made in Nigeria. So those are very important things. And Professor, just to finish on one last point, because you asked public, yes, technology is important, but the public sector is just as equally important, because no matter how the technology evolution, yes, they are there. We've also seen it in the solar sector. Many technology evolution have allowed for an important decrease of cost. But if you don't have the right policies in place to attract the different investments, the technology will not be able to take us as far as we need to. So yes, public-private partnerships are important. Right setup of regulations, and this is already in place in the sector and needs to keep growing. Professor, I think I did it, 4 minutes.
Thank you. Please let me recognize them all. I want to change the dynamics, because I know there are some of you in the audience. You've listened to a lot of this since morning. You've not been just more or less becoming as if you are in a mosque or in a church. The pastor is speaking, the imam is speaking, you can't see anything. I want to change the dynamics. I want to hear from you. And then I will engage them in the closing remark. Now, there are two components to Nigerian audience. You hardly ask questions. You like to make a comment. But I want those who want to ask these panelists questions. Then I'll give opportunity in the next round to those who want to make a comment. Is there anybody? I'll give opportunity to 5 questions. You can direct it to any of them. Who would like to ask questions on this humanizing energy from the point of view of availability, accessibility, affordability, and acceptability? It's called quadruple A's. Any question? Raise up your hand from this. Any question?
Sorry.
What about this column? Any question, please?
This way, sir.
I'm coming that way. Any question? We call it equity.
Yes, sir.
None here? Tolu, no question. Here, one person. Madam, you are number one. Keep that number. Number two at the back. Number three. There. Anybody there? Number four, madam. And then number five. I'll come round. Questions, please. No comment, no preamble. Throw them a question. I'll come back.
Hold on to the mic. I'll get to you. Well, let me go with it, with his numbering. You were number one, right?
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I thought number one was here. No, okay, you are number one.
Yeah, well,
okay,
thank you
question,
very much,
please.
Professor. My name is Phoebe Joel. I'm a reservoir engineer in Shell. And my question really goes in direction of energy efficiency. We want people in humanizing energy. You mentioned, sir, that we need to educate people on even the use of energy. So aside from the educated people, is there any method that you think is reasonable or is efficient in educating the local people, the rural areas, about energy efficiency, using energy efficiently?
Thank you. Do you have any particular panelists on mind? Or I could throw it to anyone. Thank you. Energy efficiency, how do we promote? Number two. Oh, did I give you number two? No. Oh, number two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mbazo Jeremiah. I'm the senior partner of Step Up Nuclear. I'm a nuclear engineer. My question goes to the panelists and also to you, Professor. I want to know, when you talk about humanizing energy, in what aspect of the energy spectrum are you talking about humanizing? And I want to also ask the all-on CEO. I'm thinking about the kind of energy projects or activities that you support. I wonder if you have maybe taken time to look into the nuclear energy development for Nigeria. I
think that's all. I hope you didn't vote twice, so I asked you to ask only one question. Number 3, please.
Hello. Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you to our panelists. I'm Dr. Sarah Winnie from Petroleum Training Institute, as well as CBWN. My question is on technology. Knowing that the technologies that are used in this industry are proprietary to the companies that are not domiciled in Nigeria, how do we leverage on knowledge transfer partnership to cascade this knowledge and build and utilize it to build homegrown technologies that will work for us as a nation? Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Tony Akimusho. I'm interested in the gentleman from the Petroleum Training Institute. What exactly is any specific project that the PTI is working on to help support the transition? I just need to know a specific project at the PTI, because curriculum development will be involved in the energy transition. Thank you very much.
Excellent question. Number 5 for now.
Okay. I am Engineer Queen Chibweze from Association of Professional Women Engineers in Nigeria, APOEM. My question is simple a bit. I want to find out, because when the first speaker, the second speaker made mention of the payment of energy and how much is paying. So I am asking, are the distribution companies in this summit so that they will listen and take home and know how to use the outcome of this summit? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usuji. Please continue to monitor time for us. We don't want to take you away from, because I told you we can be here for till 6 p.m. PTI, what are you doing in preparation for this transition? 2 minutes, please.
At PTL, we are doing quite a lot preparing for energy transition. Our core mandate is to train and to develop capacity. And one of the areas we saw that we will have need, as the gentleman also mentioned, is in curriculum development. And one of the things we did immediately we started this process is to approach the big players in the industry. We actually approached the OPTS and we liaison with them so that together we can look at our curriculum, we can look at what we do, and look at where the state of the industry is, and also to advise us to have their own input in what we do. That is on one hand. Another thing we are doing internally also, we are doing a lot of R&D, doing a lot of research into alternative forms of energy and how to make this energy more efficient. We are working on that. And
you know, we have a lot of people who can fund you right here in this room. He wants to know, that guy who asked you the question can fund you.
Yes.
Just tell him exactly one project you are doing.
Okay.
Just one. He said, just give me one thing you are doing to humanize energy. And then meet him at the end, because he can give you money to fund. Just tell him.
So thank you. I thought we are looking at other forms of energy and we are driving a research
the question he asked you is, give me exactly what is exactly PTI is doing. Just use the curriculum development to cover you. Don't bite that. Tell him exactly one project you are doing.
Yes, we have a research team in biomass. And we have another research team that's looking at other forms of like wind and solar. All this, we have research clusters working on them.
Sorry, I'm not grading you, but I know the man who asked the question. And he wants to propose. Carol, I'm going on. No. Your 2 minutes gone. Carol, somebody asked you a specific question.
Point, but no, we do not. Our business model is very specifically focused on deploying capital to help off-grid solutions at scale, off-grid renewable energy solutions at scale, mainly solar, others, but not nuclear. Thank you.
Amen. You said that you are paying 75 naira per liter. Your contemporary wants to know whether there is any distribution company here. Is there any employee of the distribution company in the room? Please don't, just be proud of yourself.
No, but Prof.
No, don't answer the question here too. Because anybody from any disco company in this room, please, we are talking in terms of energy for the future. And you are talking in terms of humanizing energy. The contact between human beings with respect to using energy
is the distribution.
Are who?
The distribution companies here.
And the petrol stations, right? Petrol stations. If you live in the US like I do, if you want to know any problem with respect to energy, the first thing when you wake up in the morning is to look at where?
Gas price.
They're on the display every morning. Now we don't have anybody in this school. Do we have anybody from downstream in this room? Do we have anybody from the regulatory authority in this room? Do we have anybody from Nigeria Electric Regulatory Commission in this room? And you want to humanize energy. And the facial. Do we have anybody from academics in this room? Please stand up if you're from academic, not from PTL. Because if your director were not on this panel, you probably won't be here. If we want to humanize energy, these institutions that I'm mentioning are critical, but they are not here. So I continue to challenge the organizer of this. You did well, you gave free access to students, but do we have them here? If we are going to be successful with respect to the future and getting energy to be humanized, we need to get a way to get the people that are the interface between the society and us, users of energy. All right, because somebody was asking us, and anybody could respond to this, what spectrum are we talking about, right? When we talk about humanizing energy. the spectrum. Do you understand the question, Victor? Spectrum.
Our colleague here answered him a question because he made mention of nuclear, that if Nigeria is working on any nuclear programs or something, or which other forms of energy and spectrum of energy Nigeria is looking onto. She answered him on that. I think is this lady here that asked a question about how are we educating the people from the rural community about energy,
efficiency.
Efficiency. But let me just make a comment there. It's difficult for you to educate someone on something the person is not aware of, because most of those people you made mention of, they are still using lantern and they don't have access to electricity. So if you get to them and start, educating them about electricity, they don't know what it looks like. So what are the energy sources that should be, moving to rural area? What we need to talk about now? Okay, what kind of energy grid that's supposed to be constructed in people from here to have access to? So, but the people from the urban area are the people that need that education about energy sources and effective way of using energy, that you don't need to light up your bulb overnight and be consuming energy. There are some cities in December I was in London, and most of the street in London was dark because there is no energy to power them. So there are some people that have been that understand this energy rationing, that this time they need to move some source of energy to this side and some other they move it. So it's not for rural people, it's for the urban people. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead, Carol. How can you say energy is not for the rural people?
Education, the education of using energy. I'm saying you don't educate people that don't have access to it.
No, but...
All right, Carol.
Can you hear me? Yeah, on this point, obviously there's not one element that is the panacea.
There's one class.
Oh my God. No, just on that point with regards to educating right at the heart of the communities, that's one of the beautiful things about off-grid and mini-grids. When you actually go into communities and install a mini-grid, the population at heart is obviously an actor, an agent, whether it's about, literally a collecting agent for the funds, or whether it's the maintenance. We often, very often, if not always, have the community fully involved. And that's one of the reasons why, when it comes to humanizing energy, off-grid is definitely plays a key part in it.
Well, yeah. Tayo, I'm going to come to you, but let me go to Mrs. Agunlo.
Yeah, I hear me. No, sorry, I just want to cover 3 points. Maybe I think the point around education, I think the point you're trying to make is that the education for urban dwellers is different from the rural dwellers. So for example, I pay 75 naira per kilowatt, but I have almost 100% performance. I always have electricity. So when we talk about affordability and accessibility and availability, you have to ask yourself, do you have to pay 75 naira per kilowatt to have it for 100% of the time? Because if you take that to the woman in the village, she's definitely not going to pay 75 naira per kilowatt. So the education and the provision for those people was very different. So that's the first point. The second point, you talk about spectrum. I think overarching point we've always made is that the Paris Agreement around getting to net zero at 2050 remains relevant. I think let's not leave this room thinking that we don't agree to net zero. The question is, what is underneath it? How do you get there, right? What you don't want is that you don't want to shut off one source before you are fully ready for the next. I'll give you an example. When I used to live in Houston, there was a time that we had snowfall, and then we had complete blackout for 2 days. To be honest with you, I had no clue what to do with my kids. I was so confused that we got into the car and I drove round and round and round and round. We're in complete darkness. So you can imagine in a developed country, just 2 days of snow, you are handicapped. So I think that's the whole question that we try to say is, how do you make sure you don't get yourself in that situation so you transit quite nicely? So the spectrum sort of always continues to extend. And just specifically for nuclear, I'm actually a proponent of nuclear because I think it's quite clean. But I think the story and the image of nuclear needs to be told properly, right? It has a very bad image and people don't fully understand it. And the last point, I forget now, sorry, but I'll leave it there.
It's okay, it's okay. Tayo, no, I want you to just look at this concept of proprietary. And is there a way, the technology is never transferred. It's either you acquire it or you steal it.
Yeah.
And stealing is not robbing. No, No, listen. I'm sorry. 40 years ago, when I joined Shell, and on the rig, I let every person know that I'm coming to drive them out of business in Nigeria. And I followed them regularly to get the knowledge from them that 6 months I was already running a rig by myself, fresh from the university after national service, a $5 billion rig that has never drilled anywhere. I spotted the well, a young man, right?
He went there.
So, Tayo.
Yes, sir.
Technology, we don't have it, but we are exposed to it.
Right. Thank you very much.
What can we do with it?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I knew that question was going to come from Dr. Sarah. For those that don't know Dr. Sarah Winnie with PTI, she's one of the most passionate proponents of R&D in Nigeria. So I was expecting that. So let me just quickly address. So, sir, between acquiring and stealing, there's something in between. It's called licensing. And that's very important because, believe it or not, I have competitors whose technology I license. In other words, I pay them to use their technologies. It's not a shameful thing to do. My take on licensing and IP, we will have to live with it, and we have to collaborate. You mentioned collaboration. We have to collaborate, and quite frankly, if I find something interesting, I commercialize it, and you can come get it. Or if I think it's sensitive enough to where I can't compete with, and I'll find trusted vendors, trusted value chain, and build that around that. One thing we need to remember is technology providers are not always all-rounded. So coming back to what values does a technology in Houston give to Nigeria? Well, there are many vendors in that value chain, or there are many opportunities in that value chain of delivering that technology that can help and enrich the Nigerian value system, or retain value here. Having said that, I think from the R&D standpoint, we've always talked about, Dr. Sarah, you and I talk about this, there is the basic research which we should never stop and should be in part of our curriculum. But then there's advanced research. I think what we need to do in Nigeria is that our advanced research need to focus on areas that other countries or other areas or companies do not find lucrative. I'll give you an example. Why don't we have vaccines for malaria? It is not lucrative, right? So they're not spending time on it. WHO maybe, but you won't find Pfizer and the Eli Lilly doing it. I just use as an example. It's not of concern to them because they can't sell it outside. So there are problems in Nigeria, in our industry, in the energy industry, oil and gas industries, that other countries do not face. That is where we need to focus on R&D on it. And, electricity.
All right. Can you hear me? Please, can you hear me? Well, there was a friend of mine He came to Nigeria with his abroad wife, and they took light when he came. And when the light came, everybody was jubilating and happy. I said, why are they jubilating and happy?
Bro, they're not hearing you this way. So just wait for your mind to come on.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to entertain while we are waiting for the light.
How many seconds were here? No, you know you were asking if discos were here.
Yes.
Just give us a few more seconds and we're live.
All right. Then you have to increase my time.
Okay.
Wow.
So, Prof, while you're doing this, let me just give you this question before you call Diko to
Okay.
talk. Someone is asking, it's a question here. He said, energy subsidy removal and humanizing energy. Any contradiction? That's for your panel. Once your mic comes back on.
All right.
Give you that.
And this clock is moving so fast.
No, it's not moving so fast. It's moving as it should.
Is it humanized?
It's a humanized club. It's a humanized club. Guys, it's a humanized club.
How come it didn't stop when the light went off?
Okay, pause that time now. Pause the time. Thank you for pausing
You see me go fast.
It's on UPS, sir.
It is paused now. So it's a human club. It's a humanized club. Yeah, it's a human club.
Well.
Okay, Prof, try again. Let's see if the mic is not on, but try speaking. It's not on yet.
All right. Please, if you can hear me, I think my story is already not particularly relevant. But then they took light after she had arrived in Nigeria for a couple of days. The first time they were jubilating because light came. She was surprised. The second time the light went off, she was there and she saw light being off. And when they brought the light, what do you think she was doing?
Jubilating.
That's for you to ponder about. Now, I gave you an opportunity that for those who would like to make comment, if you can summarize your comment in 1 minute, I will call you. I have 3. 1 lady and 2 men. And don't ask me why, because I had more ladies the first time than this time. Number 1, Madam. Number 2, no, only 1 lady, please. All right. Number 3, not you, because you've spoken once. All right. I'll start with number 3. I've already given you number 2, Madam. You are number 2. Yes. Number 1, then you are number 3, right? So let me start with number 3. Microphone, please. 1 minute, because this thing is running too fast, and it's affecting my brain.
Thank you.
It's dishumanizing me in energy.
Shinan Dikwal, African Energy Council. My question is, we talk about humanizing energy. What does it really mean? I think for many of us, we're not quite clear. What are the particular nuggets of humanizing? We talk about affordability and all of that. Is that the only thing? Is there more to it, to humanize energy? Is there design thinking? Is there system thinking? What does it really mean to humanize? Is it all about cost and economics?
So everything we've been saying for this last... All right, number 2.
My name is Chidima Obi. I represent Dindo Energy. Mine is a comment, and it's to all of you. Is it possible to put a time frame within which this humanizing energy can be done? And the people who are selling alternative energy, some of us can't even afford it as long as it is. How will it go round to the rural areas? A lot of us have villages that we go to. It is impossible as we speak in Nigeria today for alternative energy to be afforded in our communities?
Thank you. Number one, who's my number one? Thank you. Remember 1 minute, please.
I'm Femi Akarakiri with Ondo State Government. Whether via the transition of energy or with the current one, I think the challenge that we need to face as a country is how to actually domesticate the technologies involved. And that's why I was quite excited when I heard for the first time towards the tail end of the panel, R&D. We are not doing what we need to do. So whether with the current one or the one that we want to transit to, if we want that transition to be with ease, we have to find a way to make sure that we invest in R&D. We cannot do it with imported technologies. It will be too expensive. So I hope that come next year, we'll be able to have a panel session on R&D in Nigeria. Thank you.
You remember that story from the scripture, that person that was asking the judge, and the judge finally said, please give it, please, comment, please. I surrender my own time in my comment.
I'm Dr. Esiche, Director R&D, Petroleum Training Institute. My comment is this. Several years ago, when I was doing my master's, I used the facilities of Shell. And by the time I was done, I asked them, what challenges do we have that one can research on so that I can pick it up for my PhD? And the response was that all our research is done outside the country. So I am glad for the comment he made. That,
who's the he? Yeah, we are three.
Tayo.
Okay.
Tayo, saying that our problems, we must develop R&D towards the problems we have. Because if it's not something peculiar to us, the West will not be interested in it. Now, my comment, therefore, is that the academia and the industry right now must come together. They should let us know what the challenges are, and then those of us in academia can do researches to solve those problems. And perhaps now that the West is pulling back from funding, maybe they will now look back in our direction. Because what they said then was that all our researches are done from outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Listen, I have 1 minute to go. And no, please forgive me. I have only 1 minute to go, and I'm a timekeeper. And everything I've done will be nullified if I broke their rule. I want to be invited back. So please, I want us.
Sorry, Professor, sorry not to interrupt, but you have two Shell people here, and Shell has just been indicted that we said that we cannot support local research. So I think it's fair to give Shell an opportunity to truly explain what we do as a company.
No, are you representing Shell on this panel?
Yes.
No, but I'm the moderator. All right. Listen, you can choose to defend Shell when you give the final comment, and that's where we are now. I'm going to give all of you 2 minutes. Look at the comments people have. Look at the one that concerns you the most, the person that wanted to know the definition. You have 2 minutes to convince him that what you've said before is really the definition of. So please, let's take 2 minutes quickly, and I won't take more than 2 minutes to round up my own opinion. Remember that question. Subsidy removal and humanizing energy. Is there a contradiction? So, Carol, I'm going to start from you and finish with Hemen. 2 minutes, please.
Being part of this very exciting panel. I think one of the last lady made was with regards to cost of electricity in rural areas. And I do want to come on that point because there are a few things. I don't have enough time to go through all of the different layers, but one thing that I will address is that cost is important, but there's also the perception of what it truly costs. I think there's a lot of work to be done with regards to changing the perception of what it truly costs now for off-grid solutions in rural economies. However, that being said, I agreed, even if cost has decreased, and even if cost might not be as high as it is perceived, cost does remain a question, I agree. One thing that we do need to think when it comes to off-grid sector, renewable energy, is the fact that subsidy is very important. It is still a nascent sector. And very often people say, oh, we should get away from this because it's too costly and it still relies on subsidy. Well, no. When I hear that, I really I make the plea to remind people that when it comes to developed countries, wealthier economies, none of those countries have gotten to where they are currently when their electricity level without heavily subsidizing electricity access, be it through transmission lines that were costly and that were fully developed or heavily developed through public funds as a public good or other ways of subsidizing. So yes, cost is an issue, but it is a fact that we must take into account when we look at the renewable energy sector and off-grid access, because at the end of the day, it is still the fastest and most cost-competitive way of connecting people in rural areas who do not have access to energy and electricity very specifically. Thank you.
Wow. Victor, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Prof. I want to make a comment on the, the proprietary. I know, Mrs. Taya was trying to make, give more explanation about that. Our company, Kenyan International, operate, and we're in business today because of, partnership. A lot of companies out there are willing to collaborate if actually you have what it takes for them to collaborate with you. Collaboration is all over the world. The Americans are collaborating with the Japanese are Europe are collaborating with Asia, North and South America. But I think most of the problem we have is that most of our government representatives, whenever they want to sign some bilateral agreement, it sometimes sell us out, because some of these things can be discussed during whenever they want to sign most of those agreements, but sometimes they will just sign agreement that is just one-sided. So companies and countries out there are willing, to collaborate when there is a win-win situation. So we can reach out to anyone that we want to collaborate with, and whenever they see, the potentials from them, from whatsoever business or whatsoever is going to come up, they'll be willing to collaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. CEO.
Thank you very much, sir. My comments will be on R&D, and also to say that at the Institute we have research clusters around topical issues or problems of the oil and gas industry, and also humanizing energy. We are open for collaborations. We need funding, we need support, and I believe that with this kind of forum we have here, and where we have the necessary support, we can develop our homegrown technologies that will help to serve the industry in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tayo.
I just want to spend the next minute or so to rehash the whole concept of humanizing energy. It is not a project, so it's not something you start and you finish. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that says humans need energy, so the purpose of energy is to benefit humans, and it has to be available to all of them. It is the same mindset that says, while you're doing that, you need to be cognizant of the impact of your action, getting the energy or using the energy, on the sustainability of the environment. And there's a part of it, there's a third part of it that we didn't get to actually talk about, which is understanding the fact that Africa, as an example, energy is of economic importance to us. That's what, well, let me put it this way. Fossil fuel. What is it?
I don't think this goes
they do not like me at all. I'm going to try and project. I think the last part is to understand the fact that many African countries and maybe some other third world countries still rely on the energy or the resources that is available to them. And making a transition or a policy that makes it impossible for them to use their resources is not humanizing energy. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try. I don't know. Is it loud enough?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I can interpret. Let me be your loudspeaker.
No, Prof. I can do that for her if she wants to.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you want me, I can amplify whatever you say.
Oh, okay.
Who am I?
Well, I think, let me summarize, let me try and project, but let me summarize maybe 5 key things. One is, I think we've talked about the story for humanizing energy has to have the human part of it, right? We have to make sure we care about what happens to people. I think the second point we've made here is climate change and sustainable development remain the same part of the coin, right? It's not one or the other. So that's the whole message around. You have to think about it in totality. I think third, we've talked about Nigeria and Africa as its own does not have enough capacity from renewable to go through the transition as the rest of the world. So we have to create our own transition journey that is different from the rest of the world. And gas remains a critical part of the story as we transit. And I think until the United Development Goal 7 says power for all, until we get to a point where every person is treated fairly, equitable, we would not really tell the true story about climate change. And finally, I want to talk about Shell. I've worked for Shell for about 18 years, and I've worked in various locations. And the lady talked about our research always done abroad.
He may try. Try the mic.
Does it work now? Okay. Perfect, just about Shell. So I think, let me conclude, as I said, just to talk about Shell is, I've worked in different parts of the world, and I've worked quite extensively with Shell. When it comes to research, our research can be globalized, but it's also very much localized. And we do a lot of partnership with a lot of the schools. So even when I was working in Port Harcourt, when I was working in Lagos, the solutions for each of our local environments is very unique and is very different. So I apologize that your experience was different, but very, very different. And we do have local, global research, but each OU or each operating unit still has its own local need being met, and we partner with universities. So let me conclude that I said, let's not forget, sustainable development and climate change remain the same part of the coin, and everybody should have access to electricity. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. I think let's recognize them, even as I give you
Please, I have an
just my 2-minute summary. I'm not a Shell apologist. Quote me anywhere. All you need to do is to look at the indigenous company in Nigeria producing oil. Then you will understand what Shell did for Nigeria. I'm not going to say more than that. I'm not a Shell apologist. But anybody that is condemning Shell needs to go back to history. I work in the oil and gas industry for many years. And I can stay in the west side location in my days till 3 a.m. in the morning, and nothing will happen to me when I'm going back to the rig. So I understand. And unfortunately, nobody wants to talk about energy humanizing, not humanizing, or humanizing. With respect to petroleum subsidy removal. And the question is removing petroleum subsidy dehumanizing energy? And the answer is no. And I'm going to talk more about this. You can read more about my opinion about that. I'm not afraid of politics. Listen, it is transactional leadership mindset that has perpetuated petroleum subsidy in Nigeria. Transactional leadership mindset among the Labour Congress. That's why every leader of the NNC can only get a button if he went to strike because of petroleum subsidy. Listen, it is not dehumanizing energy to remove petroleum subsidy. In fact, it is optimizing human energy centrics. If you remove petroleum subsidy, that made the roads worse off, the hospitals worse off, the medical infrastructure worse off, and making your young people to Japan. I didn't hear amen. So next time we can put it as a topic, and I want to guarantee you that the Nigerian Association for Energy Economics will actually have a workshop on that. Is removing petroleum subsidy dehumanizing energy or humanizing energy. Thank you very much. And by the way, I told the organizer that keeping you till 6 p.m. will not be a trouble for me. No. So I thank you for your cooperation. Please, let's recognize these great panelists.
Please remain seated, panelists, for just...
Thank you very much.
Just 2 more minutes. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. We want to do a humanizing thing by appreciating your contributions to this conference today. Before I get to that, this evening, the dinner at the State House is for every registered delegate. Your delegate registration gives you access. However, the networking reception is strictly for VIPs only. The reason is simple. The space there cannot take all delegates and VIPs together. So they have just made it that way so that there be a bit of ease of movement within the networking room and allow for a more robust networking and conversations during networking. Once again, the networking for VIPs, the dinner for all registered delegates. Mr. James Shindi, CEO Brevity Anderson, where are you? Is he in the room? If he's not, is the chairman here? Chairman, please, can you step forward? Hold on. Ladies, hold on. Please, Mr. Akoni, please step forward. Mr. Akoni is the chairman of Brevity Anderson. He will do the honors of presenting this human plaque to those that discuss humanizing energy. Please, yes, on the stage. Let's begin with, which one do you have there? Is it Prof you have there? Go ahead. Ladies first. Okay, ladies first. Let's. You want to begin with Ahimen, fantastic. Ladies first, and Ahimen goes first. Thank you, Ahimen, for sharing this insights with us. Okay, cool. So next, I'd like to call on you, Caroline. Thank you. Can I have the poll question on the screen now? There's a poll question for this session. Quickly, while we're doing this, put it on the screen so delegates can start voting. Grab the keypad that is on your chair, is strapped to the chair where you're seated. Grab your keypad, hit whichever of the letters that agrees with what is there, and then hit on the green button to say yes. Please, everyone, vote. Guys, my screen, I can't see the question on my screen, guys. Okay, it's just A or B. Renewable energy is not the solution to Nigeria's energy poverty. Do you agree or disagree? Have we given everyone? Please grab your keypad and start voting. I promise you I will announce the result before the end of the session. It will not be inconclusive. Please, if your own is not working, wave at me. N.I.E.S and company, be on the lookout. A lot is not working. N.I.E.S, who else can help N.I.E.S here? Where is Paul in the room? N.I.E.S, is there something I need to do that I need to amplify from here now? Are the batteries down? I don't think so. We got them all powered up before this. So it's working. What do they need to do? Are we done? Please rise quickly for a group photograph, and please hold your plaque for the group photograph. Who is left? Everyone has got. Oh, please, Dikbo. My bad. Dikbo, I'm so sorry. Huh? Which one? Huh? Okay, so you just need to hold the button, like press and hold the button. Press and hold the button, A or B, and you cast your vote. Press and hold. Engineer Dikbo, please get your plaque. Sorry. No, stay for the picture. Stay for the picture, Engineer Dikbo, please. Stay for the picture. Professor literally, he can know how to fly, so, I mean, it's a fantastic... Chief Akoni, you're in the picture as well. Prof, Dikwa is an understanding person. Pictures, please. Tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8:30, the women breakfast meeting will take center stage, and at 10 a.m. in this room, His Excellency Professor Yemi Oshimbajo will be coming to address us. And for that meeting, for us not to have an overflow, he will be going from that conversation in this room straight to the exhibition floor, and all exhibitors will be expected to very kindly man their exhibition booth so that we will not be delaying him any further once he rises from the speaking lectern in this room. So 10 a.m. the prof will speak, 8:30 a.m. the women will start. We'll see you tomorrow morning, but before that time, put on your dancing shoes, come a bit hungry and thirsty for drinks. Let's entertain, feed and serve you at the Presidential Villa of the Banquet Hall tonight. Go get refreshed and I'll see you then. Richmond Osuji is my name. Arrivederci.